People think that geographical segregation happens due to racism. I will show you why this is almost impossible to get rid of. Look at a city. Look at a neighborhood. Often you will see a mix of people, but sometimes you will see something else. A clear divide. Entire areas separated by race, income, or culture. It's a phenomenon called segregation, and it is one of the most complex and sensitive problems we face, and we have it basically everywhere. But this is actually not a simple problem, and it is almost impossible to solve. Today we are going to build a model to find out why. This is our world. It's a simple two-dimensional grid, a neighborhood, and living in this neighborhood are two types of humanoids. Let's call them black humanoids and white humanoids. At the start of each simulation run, they are randomly spawned in the houses. And here is the one and only rule of this world. Each person has a simple preference. They want to live in a neighborhood where they feel comfortable. We're going to define comfortable as having at least a certain percentage of their neighbors who are the same color as them. For this first experiment, let's set a very, very small threshold. Let's say a person is unhappy if less than 30% of their neighbors are like them. That's just 3 out of their 8 neighbors. If they are unhappy, they will pick up and move to a random empty spot where they would be happy on the map, hoping to find a better neighborhood. So that's it. That's the only rule. They just have this slight preference towards a tiny comfort. I mean, would you be comfortable with all your neighbors being different? What do you think happens when we let this simple process run? On the left side you can see a simple measure of how much the humanoids have been clustered. I used spatial autocorrelation for this, and you can basically just see how far away we are currently from random clustering. If my teachers would watch this video, they would hit me and tell me to label this axis, but this is just meant as a visual aid. Let's speed things up a bit. As humanoids move, their neighbors' situations change. Someone who was happy might suddenly become unhappy because a neighbor moved away. Let's inspect the result. We get a few clusters of white and black humanoids, and they mostly live segregated in some smaller groups. These rather small groups exist because we calculate satisfaction only on first-degree neighbors and don't go further with it. But we can still see that even with humanoids being tolerant, they still clustered, and it appears to be a somewhat racist neighborhood. Let's be even more tolerant. Let's set our comfort threshold to just 20%. That's just 2 out of 8 neighbors. Surely that won't lead to segregation, right? The humanoids are moving, but something is different. The clusters that form are much smaller, much more scattered. The simulation runs, but it never reaches a state which is as segregated as before. It remains in a stable, integrated, but still somewhat clustered mix. The system finds a different equilibrium. So that's the tipping point. The difference between a 20% preference and a 30% preference is the difference between a mixed society and a totally segregated one. And here's the surprising part. Nobody in the simulation was racist. Every single humanoid was fine with being in the minority, but their tiny innocent preference for comfort created a segregated world that none of them actually wanted. It's called the Schelling Segregation Model, and it proves you don't need bad people to get a bad outcome. Now, do you think something would change if we added more groups? Let's say we also add yellow humanoids and brown humanoids. Let's see in the simulation. Nothing really changed. So why is real-world segregation almost impossible to get rid of? Because we are not fighting hatred, we are not fighting math. This model shows that even with zero racism, and just by everyone making some tiny choices to be more comfortable, we get to a segregated state and a segregated society. So next time you see a segregated neighborhood, just think, hey, maybe they are not racist and they just all wanted to be a bit more comfortable. If you want to see something different with the simulation in the next video, please let me know in the comments. We could do, for example, a different distribution of white people or black people, or we could implement some people which actively seek out difference, or we could implement random moving, which could also solve the problem.